All right, well, welcome back. We're going to call this episode 2 of the Datsun 280Z refresh. The last video was just kind of a garage update. I was working on this Datsun, and I've been working on this Datsun non-stop ever since then. So it's no longer kind of a garage update video. We are focusing 100% on this 280. We're getting away from the Ford for a while because I wanted to get this running and on the road. And it's a refresh because I wanted to assemble the car because I was starting to misplace pieces. I got the car in boxes. It was completely disassembled. And I was starting to lose kind of certain pieces and boxes as I moved stuff around the garage. So I decided that it needed to be rebuilt or put back together and running at the very least so that it was together and I wouldn't lose parts. The first goal was to do a complete redo on the car, paint, dash, complete suspension, and really make it nice. However, that's going to take more money than I want to put into it right now, more time. And so it turned into a refresh. However, this refresh is getting fairly extensive. Because it's disassembled, as you run into parts that need to be addressed, replaced, or refurbished, it's easier just to do it rather than put it off till later. Now, I haven't done everything. There's certain suspension components that I haven't touched yet, ball joints and struts and a few rubber parts in the back. We'll get to them eventually, but quite a few of them I have. The steering components and the bushings for the steering rack, and some of the front parts, the brake, master cylinder, and booster, and all that kind of stuff. So it's turning into a fairly extensive refresh, and what I'm focusing on now is the intake manifold. I showed you a video of me putting on the fuel rail. Well, I was laying in bed the other night. I was like, man, I soaked it to get rid of the rust, and it looks nice. However, there is a little bit of rust on the inside of this fuel rail. It's just a steel. And there's no real easy way to eliminate the rust that's in there, and I'm kind of worried about particles making their way into the injectors and clogging them up. So the proper way to fix that would be to send this off to a plating company, and what they would do is they would soak it in an acid. They would eliminate the rust, whether it be through some kind of media blasting or the process that they've perfected, and then they would recoat it in the yellow zinc cadmium, and it would be good as new. However, I don't have the money. I should say I don't want to spend the money to do that. It'd probably be a couple $100, I would imagine. So in the meantime, I took everything back apart. I blew it out with air in a variety of carb cleaner and some oils, some WD-40 and a few other oils to try to loosen anything up that I could in there. And as you put air on this and it blows it out, you could see some debris coming out. So I did that a bunch of times until it was fairly clean. And then I decided to order some 6mm fuel filters. These are little stainless steel basket filters. And what these will do is I'm going to put these in each pipe. There's 6 of them, each pipe that then gets attached to the injector. And that will trap any rust particles that happen to make their way, and it will trap them before the injectors. Now, I don't expect there to be a lot of debris coming through these, just a little bit, because you have a fuel filter right up here. So any debris that comes through is going to already be in here. So I'm not trying to filter out all the debris from the tank, for the next decade. I'm just trying to eliminate anything that would be still trapped in this fuel rail. And so these should work fine. We're going to put it all back together and make sure that there's enough room. I measured it, and there is enough room for these little caps to sit in between the rail and the injector. So that should solve my problem and make me sleep a little bit better at night. So aside from that, we're going to go ahead and show you what we've been working on this last few weeks on this car.
It's a good idea to tap all of your bolt holes, especially on the head. Gets rid of any rust or debris out of the threads, makes it a lot nicer putting it together. Gives you a better torque reading too, a bit smoother. And this is a tap size for this particular motor is 10 millimeter by 1.5 metric. Alright, we're tightening down the head now, up to about 55 pounds, 60 at the most. Start from the center and work your way out. And I do it in threes when it's that high, so we go 20, 40, and 55 or so. Alright, a little bit of heat on that knuckle there. About 1 minute's worth of propane on that edge of that knuckle. It expands it and you just tap it right out. That's the way I usually undo my tie rod ends. We're replacing that bellows or that boot, which is broke. To do that, you have to take off the end of the tie rod. Next, we're going to mark where it's at so I can put it back together the same as I took it off. All right, we're putting this bellows on the steering rack here. Took the old one off, the new one slips right on here. Just like that. Perfect. I worked on the throwout bearing, put a new throwout bearing, a new gasket for the cap, the seal cap, and a new seal. The front of this transmission was leaking out the gasket. So I replaced all that, and then I went ahead and replaced the slave cylinder, and I'm fixing to do the master cylinder for the clutch next because the parts are so cheap. The slave cylinder was frozen, and I was going to soak it and fix it. However, a brand new one was only about 15 bucks, so I went ahead and bought a new slave cylinder, which I've already installed. Also working on quite a few of the rubber parts for the front of the suspension. Up next here is the rubber parts for the steering rack. They go right there and right there. These are the original parts, and when you turn the steering wheel, you can see the rack move, you know, 1/8 of an inch in either direction. And these new ones will tighten it up a bit. I also replaced a few of the rubber parts on the front suspension with the thrust rod grommets here, the rubber parts, and then if you can see here, we replaced the roll bar links, and of course the boot for the steering rack was cracked and ripped. So I'm just knocking off a handful of parts as I go along before we install the engine. Engine has been rebuilt and is fixing to go back in. About the only thing I have to do on the engine here is to take apart the distributor and maybe grease it up or look at it. It seems to be a bit stiff, so there's a bearing in there that's not working right. I need to take a look at that next, but everything else works. I tested the alternator. It's an old one, but it still works. All right, we're replacing these rubber grommets for the power steering rack with some stiffer ones. When you turn the wheel, you can see the rack shift maybe, you know, 1/8 of an inch or more, maybe 1/4 of an inch. This should tighten it up a bit. Now these bolts are on there very tight, so I'm gonna use a little bit of heat first to get them loose. Okay. Yeah, you can see these old rubber inserts are just trashed. They're squashed flat and they're disintegrating. So the new ones will be nice. So somebody has gone in there and wrapped rubber around the original insert.
to make it stiffen up again. Look at that. And then they drove these fasteners on tight enough to deform the nut with a power wrench, trying to get those things to grip. Very interesting. Yeah, look at that. No.
You just dodged a lot like putting a giant engineering car by yourself.
Yeah.
Where's your dad?
What I'm doing today is I'm working on the fuel rail. What I wanted to do was clean it up and paint it a little bit. We're gonna mimic the cadmium, yellow cadmium look. And to do that, I wanted to get rid of the rust and the debris, and the easiest way to do that is to use vinegar. You just go down to Walmart and get yourself a bunch of white vinegar, and you soak it for a few hours and the rust falls off. Scrub it a little bit, and then you either rinse it off, or if you want to get fancy, you use some baking soda to neutralize the vinegar. Anyway, clean it up, and then we'll do something about painting it. I'll explain that process later. But what we're doing right now is this is soaked for a few hours, and all the rust is just flaking off. Take a little brush and make it clean, and it comes out really pristine. It's amazing what vinegar does to rust. Now you can't leave it on there. Once you take it out, you have to immediately rinse it or neutralize it, otherwise it'll start flash rusting again. Once I get this cleaned up here, I'll show you the difference. Pretty amazing. All right, maybe you can see this. This side had soaked in vinegar for a while, and it's pristine, clean steel, metal, whereas this side hasn't soaked yet, and it's rust and tarnished cadmium plating, badly rusted. So if you notice, this is just fully involved rust. When I pull it out the next time to show you, it'll be clean. And the reason I use vinegar rather than an actual rust remover is price. You can buy vinegar for $2.50 a gallon, whereas a gallon of actual rust remover is like, $40 or something like that. Anyway, there you go. You can see it's really nice after it soaks for a while. So these are more parts that were rusty. They're off the throttle body, I should say. And I soaked them in vinegar and then oil. Now they're brand new looking. And we'll probably put a little bit of oil on them, keep them from rusting up again. There's the throttle body. We're done cleaning it. It was super dirty and it was corroded, and the mechanism wouldn't turn. It was stuck. It was frozen. So now it works fine. I will finish cleaning it up and we'll start putting it back together. All right, we are soaking the exhaust manifold, which was rusty, in a vat of vinegar, and you can see that it is boiling the rust right off of it. And we'll show you the after picture coming right up. All right, we're putting the exhaust manifold on. It's all cleaned up, new gaskets, and then next the intake manifold to go on. All right, we got a new set of injectors for the motor here. My cousin Ronnie bought a set of these before giving me the car. So we're just putting them all together and replacing the old ones, which were all cracked and baked and probably not working very well. All right, I'm not sure if the camera will pick this up, but maybe you can notice the difference between this paint And this paint right here. It's a very dingy white paint that has years of dirt ground into it. So what I've been doing is I clay barred the whole car, and then now I'm using a buffing compound to take off the grime, and it's turning out to be a nice white paint job. So we'll see how it turns out when we're finished. Got the engine put into the car, got ordered an exhaust manifold, buffed out the paint, and it's coming along quite nicely. Once I get the intake put together and put on the car, all that's left is wiring. I got to figure out the radiator, make sure it's not leaking. I'm going to replace a bunch of these fuel injector connectors, because of course they're all bad. They get brittle and crack and break. So I would be replacing a whole bunch of those plugs throughout the front of the engine. And then it's downhill from there. Then it's just fluids, spark plugs. We'll see if we can fire it up. So that's the update on this 280Z. Check back on the next video, and you'll probably see me zipping around the parking lot in it. See ya.